Okay, I believe the title of this film is Graduation Trip Mallorca. I believe I pronounced that correctly. Now, I saw this film was available on Amazon Prime, a new film, and since I'm always doing rants, I'm always looking for new films to rant on or new television shows. I decided to watch this film because I thought, like, okay, this looks kind of interesting. This is a Spanish film. I believe it was done entirely, Mallorca is in Spain. So I believe this film comes from Spain. I didn't really read much about it. It has no reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, which I found very odd. And I probably won't get a lot of views from this thing because I've noticed the more obscure the film or TV show that I talk about, the less views I get. But I will tell you that you might look at this film and you might think it's like, oh, this is one of those films that was very popular in the 1980s. These sex comedies that often involve teenagers. Often these teenagers were about to graduate and they would throw these wild parties, and there was usually plots about them just essentially either losing their virginity or just sowing their wild oats. I will tell you that Graduation Trip Mallorca is not that type of film. But I will have to say, like, in the 80s, there were a lot of films that were like this, that looked like they were going to be one of those teenage/sex sort of films. These films were very much condemned by critics. I remember Siskel and Ebert did an entire show where they just kind of condemned this type of genre that was very popular with films like, say, Porky's or Revenge of the Nerds or a lot of these other type of films like that. But there was a film out in those days called Risky Business, and I'm sure you've probably seen the scene that is most famous from this film is Tom Cruise lip-syncing and dancing in his underwear to old-timer rock and roll. And you might think like, oh, this is one crazy party film. Risky Business is not that film. Risky Business is a very dark film about a guy who gets involved in creating a brothel. And yeah, it's an extremely dark film if you've never seen Risky Business. This film, Graduation Trip Mallorca, and I might have said Spring Break because I don't know. I felt like there was a lot of teenage films that had Spring Break in the title or something like that. This is Graduation Trip Mallorca, in case I messed that up earlier. But yeah, it focuses on a group of teenagers who have just graduated high school and are about to take their senior trip to Mallorca. Now, the characters of this thing are actually kind of interesting. I think there's a character whose name is Gala, who is very much the straight-laced gal who would never do anything super out of control or anything like that. Well, you can probably see where this is going in the plot line. This is one of those films in which, like, yeah, there's a lot of characters that are in focus, and they never really... I don't really know if there really is a main character in this thing, but they do take their time to highlight certain characters. There's this one character who's kind of like, I wouldn't say she's like the goth girl, but she's kind of like very much the stuck-up girl. There's another character that apparently spent 6 months out of school, and whatever happened to her, she's kind of the wild girl. There's Gala, who I've already discussed before, and there's a lot of male characters. And a lot of the male characters are, well, they're teenage boys, okay? That's pretty much how I can classify them. And you know exactly what I'm thinking, what I'm trying to say with this. There's one character who they literally swallows a bunch of drugs before they take this trip. And the idea is that they're going to get the drugs out of them so they can distribute them. And they're going to be this very popular guy because they have the drugs. Seriously, that's a plot line in this film. Now, what makes this film very different is that this is a period piece. It takes place in the year 2021. And it's very important that to this film that it takes place within this period. Because at some point in this graduation trip, they go into lockdown because of COVID-19. And once they go into lockdown, these kids really can do nothing more but just stay in their hotel room. But of course, there's a pool outside that they want to be at. They want to get involved in all this stuff. They want to go. They want to find the alcohol. They want to get drunk. They want to get crazy, and they can't. And there's supervisors in there that are doing that. So that are trying to keep order as much as they can, but eventually it just kind of erupts. These students just start sneaking around. They start getting into things that they really shouldn't get into, and it becomes such a party that the news starts getting involved. The news starts reporting on this thing, and the parents get called, and they're trying to call their kids so they can get them out of there, but they can't get them out of there because that whole area might be infected and stuff like that. This is actually a really interesting setup. This is almost a horror movie setup. If this were, with a few rewrites, this could have easily been a slasher film. But it's not. And it's not a film about teenagers having sex or losing their virginity or something like that, that you would... In fact, the poster of this is just so misleading. I don't even know... But I get how they're trying to sell this film. This is a lot deeper film than I thought it was ever going to be. I just had this film on in the background while I was doing other work and thinking like, well, this might be good for a good rant. And as I was watching it, I was going like, oh my gosh, what is this film? And I was kind of like going like, yeah. There's one scene in this film that is done by Gayla, the only character's name who I really remember, honestly, where she does this speech on her phone that gets transmitted to the news. And when you see the news reporting on this thing, you're seeing a lot of people in a room that are talking about this thing, and they're talking about how this generation is the snowflake generation and stuff like that. And they're saying a bunch of really negative things about today's youth, which I actually think are relevant that they are discussing this, but I also think like it's very mean-spirited. And I actually think like oftentimes when we as adults sort of discuss how the youth of our generation is growing up, it can get very mean-spirited. And I think this film is trying to face that idea very well. Gayla's speech, where she simply talks about how you're not leaving us any hope, you're not leaving us a better world, you're giving us a world that is fake and false and corrupt, and you're just sort of, and this is how this is supposed to be, and how she's upset. And so eventually you start to see that these graduation trip people who are having this party here, and they're trying to have this party, and they do succeed in having a big party, but then the police have to come in, and they have to use gas, they have to use all kinds of things to stop this thing. And so you sort of see like it's not just a party, it is a rebellion, it is almost a protest. And because they actually kind of show at the beginning of this film how this party happens. This is one of those films that starts out where they show you a scene later in the film, a technique which I've discussed at length on my rants and how I hate that. I really think that's a very lazy way of doing filmmaking. In this case, I actually think it actually works out really well, because you think it's just like, oh, this is just a little party and the party's just getting out of control and the main character doesn't really know what to do with it. But after a while, you see that the main character has embraced this kind of thing, and you see this as sort of a protest. And in the end, there's a great scene where the main character's on the roof, and there's like a door that's locked behind them, and the police are just ready to knock it down. And you don't really see the aftermath of what happened here. I'm assuming that they were all either arrested and parents were called or something like that, and bail had to be set, because in real life that probably would happen. This film cuts in there. The strangest place that this film cuts at, though, is a scene where the characters are on the beach and just wishing that they could take this moment and have it for eternity. And I think, when you're a kid and you are graduating high school, this is something that I think is sort of happens. Like, you don't have that thing that you just took for granted for so many years is taken away from you. And I think that's sort of what they're sort of going for, this sort of thing. I do remember that. I've got a kid who just graduated high school and is kind of going through some of these things. But yeah, I really think this is a lot deeper film than you might think. And for that reason, I would recommend it. I think that this is an interesting film.